Hi, for today's video, we're going to talk about literal equations and formulas where you're going to have to take a formula and resolve it for a different variable. So that's what we call solve for indicated variable. So example number 1, Janet wants to calculate the time it takes to earn a certain amount of interest on a principal in an investment with simple interest. What equation can she use? So off to the side, you're given the equation I equals PRT. And we want to take that equation and we want to figure out how long it takes. So we're trying to solve it for time. So right now, if we look at the P and the R and the T, if they're all written right next to each other, that means multiplication. So what is the opposite inverse of multiplication? That is division. So to get rid of a times P, we divide both sides by P. To get rid of a times R, we divide both sides by R. So in this problem, we're actually going to end up dividing both sides by PR. And that will give us the variable T all by itself. So final answer is T equals I over PR. So now pause the video and take that same formula that you originally had, I equals PRT, and on the try it, try to solve it for P. So hopefully you came up with the answer P equals I over RT. So example number 2 says in half an hour, Sarah is meeting her friends at a lake. That lake is 6 miles from her house. At what average speed must she ride her bike to get there on time? Okay, so the formula that we have to use is distance equals rate times time. So D equals RT. And we want to know average speed, and average speed is the same thing as the rate. So our job is to get R all by itself. So right now, R and T are written next to each other, so that means R times T. So the opposite of timesing is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by T. So I get R equals D over T. Now that we know which formula we can use, then we can go back and start plugging in the information. So 6 miles from her house, that's the distance. So that's what we're going to plug in for D. So for D, we're going to plug in 6. Now the rate it says is in a half hour. Okay, a half hour is 30 minutes. And for an average speed, it's always per hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the half hour, which is 30 minutes, but I have to put it over 60 because rate is considered as per hour. Okay, so if you're ever driving a car and you hear someone say you're going 55 miles per hour, that's what we're talking about. So now I just take my calculator and I divide this out, and you should come up with R to equal 12 miles per hour. Okay, pause the video, and on the try it, this time you're just plugging in different numbers to figure out the rate. So hopefully you came up with the same answer that I did. As always, if not, please make sure you ask me whenever I see you next. Okay, on example number 3, A worker at a frame store is making a rectangular frame. He knows that the perimeter of the frame is 144 inches and the length is 40 inches. How can he determine the width of the frame? Well, perimeter is where you add up all the sides. Okay? And we know that the top and the bottom is the same, and we know the left and the right is the same. So that's how they came up with the formula. Perimeter equals 2 length plus 2w. So we want to take that formula and we want to solve it for the width. So first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of that 2L. So to move 2L to the other side, I have to subtract it. Now here's the catch. P and L, they are different letters, so you cannot physically subtract their coefficients. So you have to leave it as P minus 2L equals 2W. So now to get rid of the 2 in front of the W, the opposite of timesing is to divide. So then I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I get W equals P over 2 minus, and then 2L over 2, the 2's cross off and just give me L. So here's my formula. Now all I have to do is take the numbers they give me and plug them in. Says the perimeter is 144, so plug that in for P. And it tells me the length is 40, so plug that in for L. So take 144 divided by 2, and then subtract 40 from that, and you come up with the width of 32 inches. Okay, so for the next one, we're going to talk about a triangle. So pause the video and see if you can do this one on your own. If not, I will talk my way through this one because it is a little bit different. So here we go. A equals 1/2 base times height. Now, if I want to get rid of 1/2, that's a fraction. So to get rid of the dividing by 2, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So then I get 2a equals bh. And then to get h by itself, to get rid of the b, I have to divide it away. So I have the formula h equals 2a over b. So now you're just going to take your numbers and plug them in. And then when you work this out, you come up with the height to be 4 inches. Okay, moving on to the next example. On this one, okay, we're going to be baking some bread. And it says that in order to bake the bread, we need 190 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. But the problem is the oven only measures temperature in Fahrenheit. So we have to figure out what are we going to do about that. So we have the formula given to the side over here. I want to take that formula next to the star and I want to solve it for F. So in this formula, the first thing I see is a fraction, okay? So instead of the distributive property, I don't want to do distributive property. I'm actually going to just get rid of my fraction. So get rid of a dividing by 9. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. And then once again, I don't want to use distributive property. We're not using distributive property with solving for indicated variable. So instead of trying to multiply the 5 through, I'm going to do the opposite. And the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I got 9c over 5 equals f minus 32. And then the last thing I have to do is take that minus 32 and move it over by adding it. Now, don't forget, 9/5 c has a variable, so you can't actually add 32 onto it. So we're just going to say F equals 9/5 C plus 32. That's my formula I'm going to use. So now I'm just going to take the number and plug it in. So the temperature for Celsius is 190. So on my calculator, I'm going to take 9/5 times 190 and add 32 onto it. So you should come up with, he would have to set the temperature at 374 degrees for Fahrenheit. So now pause, try the next one. For this one, we are just going to go back to the original formula that was given to you because we're trying to figure out the temperature in Celsius. So we're just going to go straight to plugging in. Okay, last example. On the last example, we got M over P minus Q equals R. So once again, you see a fraction. If you see a fraction, you want to get rid of the fraction first by multiplying both sides by the denominator. So I am going to multiply both sides by P minus Q because that is in the denominator. So I have M equals R times P minus Q. But don't actually multiply by R. Okay, remember, we don't want to use the distributive property. So instead, I'm going to think the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So M over R equals P minus Q. And then to move the minus Q, I have to add Q to both sides. So P equals M over R plus Q. Okay, on the last problem, once again, I see a fraction. So if you see a fraction, you got to multiply both sides by the denominator. So I'm going to start off by multiplying each side by 2. So I get 2D equals A parentheses 2x minus 1. Remember, no distributive property. So instead of multiplying, think what's the opposite? And that is division. So divide both sides by A. So 2D over A equals 2x minus 1. Okay, sorry, your teacher should have read the directions. We're not solving for x, so I'm so sorry. We're going to have to backtrack a little bit. We are actually going to be solving for a. So instead of dividing by a, we actually want to divide both sides by 2x minus 1. So don't be silly like your teacher. Make sure you always pay attention to which variable you are solving for so that you'll know which one you want to get all by itself. So your final answer is A equals 2D over 2x minus 1. So remember, nobody's perfect, not even your teacher. We all make mistakes. The most important part is that we catch them and we fix them and then we just keep on trying. So thanks for hanging in there with me on this video. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know.